Good morning and welcome to Beyond Common Sense. One of my favorite verses, as you know if you have listened or read any of my posts for a while, is 3 John 1:4. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. And I've always liked that verse because I have that joy, that my children walk in truth. In fact, I was thinking about the three of them as they're scattered all over the place, and those three families, where the father in that home is having devotions with their children this morning. Wow. No greater joy. Absolutely no greater joy. And I weep with some of my friends who do not have that joy. I know that there's probably no greater heartbreak either. No greater joy. As John is speaking to Gaius, he's talking to a man who would be the future bishop of Pergamum. Now, that's not really that important. If you know me, you know I like to search a little deeper than just what's written there. And so I looked up some information about Gaius. Pergamum was a town about 2 hours north of Ephesus, obviously in modern-day Turkey. And so eventually Gaius would be the bishop of that area. At this point, he is just someone that John is talking to as a faithful listener. It is his child. And that made me think about this. So when I talk about my children, can I include others that are not my biological children? Oh, absolutely. What about those whom I've had the joy of leading to Christ? Yes. What about some that perhaps I had a part in that decision and I may never even know about it? Yes, those are children of ours, spiritual children. What about soul winning? That's a term that's not really talked about much today. It's still going on, that's for certain. But what made me think of it as well is that this past couple weeks, I was doing Spirit Rock in the senior high literature class. And that was a great opportunity, a great privilege, a suggestion of the pastor's wife. And I took it and really enjoyed doing that with them. Well, the junior high, we're finishing up a chapter and starting another unit, which was on service. And there were a lot of missionary stories in there. So I decided to just read to them the salvation story of Ahanu and David Brainerd and talked about them back and forth, just talking about soul winning. And I made up a paper for them to fill out about those two different passages, just because I find if I don't give them a paper, sometimes they don't really listen. So something to take notes on, something to write on. But at the very end of that paper, I had your testimony. And I had also put my testimony sort of in an outline form. Where were you? When did it happen? Who were you with? Where were you? That sort of thing. Anyway, it was very fascinating to read these and to see how many times it was dad or mom. It was family. And that's really the way it should be, isn't it? But what about all those children and people who have no one in their home to tell them the wonderful good news that Jesus died for them? That's why we need to be soul winning. And that's why we need to be giving out gospel tracts, trying to witness to some, trying to share the gospel. Some of them said it was at church. It was a Sunday school teacher. Another one said it was a pastor. And it was just a great joy and blessing to read those testimonies. So what about this business of soul winning, giving out the gospel? Obvious to me, the easiest way to do that is to hand someone a gospel tract. It's very non-invasive, and it's just a great opportunity. And of course, for me, that's a special burden because that's my testimony. What if that young man had not put a tract in the letter he had written me? God still could have used a different venue for me to see the gospel, hear the gospel, believe the gospel. But he used that one for a lot of special reasons, mainly the testimony of that young man. And so I'm thankful for that. And I have, like I said, a special burden to hand out tracts, which I wish I could tell you that I'm just constantly faithful about that. I'm not. In fact, we had this conversation in class with one young girl saying, I can't remember how she worded it, but something like, do you ever think about trying to do right just to make the devil mad. I said, oh, yes, I do that. And that might be I don't know, that might be a weak way to screw up your courage. But for me, sometimes it's like, no, I don't want Satan to win here. I want to do this because I know it will please my Lord. I know it's the right thing to do. But then there's that added kick of, you didn't win this time, Satan. So let you in on a little secret about my life. It's also in my mind because I have an opportunity today. I'm meeting someone. I think it was over Facebook Marketplace and purchasing an item, and hopefully going to meet her later today. I don't know who this is, but I'm hoping that I get an opportunity to give a gospel track. May I not give it? Oh, yes. It may not be an open door. You can sense that when someone is just not interested at all. That may happen, but I'm praying that it'll be a great opportunity. Another thing that's pushing this was a TED Talk that I showed in my speech class. A young girl, 7 years old, giving an excellent speech. So well done. In fact, I think I saw that it was 6 million views. She started out by saying this with her little Australian accent. What if I were to tell you that a game of peekaboo could change the world? She went on to explain that her point was make connections with small children while they're young, because their brains are forming so rapidly. It's a great opportunity to make connections and make them feel secure. And she went on to support her statement in an excellent way. It got me thinking, what would happen if every born-again believer would try to reach one person in 2024 with the gospel? Wow, can you imagine? I know there may be some of you out there who are listening to this who have never given the gospel to anyone, and yet you're a born-again believer. May I say, it is the greatest joy. It is the hardest thing to do because we have a strong, strong, strong enemy who hates when the gospel goes forth. But it is the greatest joy just to share the gospel. You might just say, well, I don't know how to do that. How do you do that? Well, I was having the students write out their testimonies, 7th and 8th graders, and I talked to them about this and said, the reason I'm having you do this is so that you can think about the day that you were saved. It was a glorious day. It should be the greatest day in our memory, much more important and outstanding than the day I stood and said, I do, before family and friends to Tom. Much more important and gratifying than the day I saw my son be born. And yet so often it's shrouded over. Dear friend, may I tell you that as well is a tactic of our enemy. He does not want us to be out there telling people that they can know 100% that they're going to heaven. How do you do that? Well, to be quite honest, and this is why I had the students writing it down, I said, the subject may come up with a friend, and you may freeze and think, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Well, to start with your own testimony and just share, hey, well, if you have that question, let me just tell you, this is what happened to me. And that just sets the platform to give them the gospel, to tell them simply how to be saved. Yes, it's wonderful to know those verses, Romans 3:23, for all have sinned. Yes, they are very, very important. And to tell them Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. And then, of course, Romans 5:8, but God demonstrated his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Ending up in Romans 10, for whosoever, anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord is going to be saved. Hallelujah. Yes, but maybe you can't quite do that. Do you have to go down the Romans road? No, you just need to share with them. Share your heart. Plant some seeds, maybe for somebody else to get that joy. Maybe you'll be the one that's there to reap all the seeds that others have planted into a life. You just never know. But I have to tell you, my goal for 2024 is this. It's a new attempt. The attempt is to ask them what they believe. I hope I get an opportunity to do that today. Believe me, if I do, you'll hear about it. But then pray for wisdom to take it to the place where I can just tell them the gospel. I think I've been lacking in that area, and some personal situations in my own life have brought that to the forefront. Did I ever ask that one? Well, I don't know. What do you believe? And just listen. I am guilty of not listening, having that open ear to listen. So those are the tips for today, just the challenge for today, the encouragement for the day. I'll be praying that perhaps somewhere along the way this may just encourage someone to go out and do the impossible. Tell someone about Jesus. And hey, what better way to have a good and godly day? Thanks for listening.